Today marks 65 years of independence, a time for celebration and also deep reflection on whether we have truly lived up to the ideals of freedom, democracy, and good governance. My guest today on the program is one of Nigeria's fearless voices for accountability for citizens' rights. She is an active Nigerian citizen, entrepreneur, and co-founder of the Bring Back Our Girls movement, which brought about global attention to the abduction of the Chibok schoolgirls. She was also at the forefront of the End SARS protest, demanding an end to police brutality. Known for speaking truth to power without fear, she continues to challenge leaders and inspire citizens to demand better. I have with me in the studio Aisha Yesufu. Many thanks for joining me in the studio.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. Today, Nigeria marks 65 years of independence. Have we truly lived the ideals of independence and democracy?
I think the question is, are we even truly independent? That's the first thing. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, many people don't see themselves as citizens, so they think that, oh, they're sort of like, I don't want to use the word slaves, but they are sort of like servants or something. You have to respect, authority and not say anything. And sadly, it comes from our upbringing, the agency we had, where children were asked not to speak up. If a child speaks up, that child is seen as a stubborn child. And so over time, people grow into adulthood and they replace their parents with guardsmen. So whatever the authority says, that's the way it goes. And also with the militarization that we had over the time in Nigeria, where there was so much military rule, you have a lot of citizens also, especially of the older generation, who have been put into that mode where they have to obey and they can't speak up, and so there's still that fear in us all. But at the end of the day, yes, Nigeria is 65 years, and we have this beautiful, amazing country that has so much potential, that it's so endowed, but yet it's so down there. That's just the frustrating thing, about Nigeria. It's a country that you can't help but love it. The people are great, they're amazing, they have can-do spirit, there's so much potential. And then you also see how we sort of like self-sabotage. It's almost as if Nigerians are in an abusive relationship, with their government and the country. And so whenever something wants to happen, they feel that, oh, good things can happen to them, and then they sabotage themselves. And that's why you see people defending leaders that have failed them. Just like when you have people in an abusive relationship, you're trying to take them out, they're fighting you, and making all sorts of excuses for those who are abusing them. And when they see good leaders who want to lead, they're so suspicious because they're used to being treated badly. But whenever anybody treats them well, they're actually suspicious. So, yeah, happy Independence Day to Nigeria. We'll take it as it comes. Here we are not where we're supposed to be, but at least we are not under colonial rule or military rule, and we have our democracy as much as it is not where we want it to be, but it is still something to celebrate.
You mentioned freedom of speech. You talked about some Nigerians are free to talk, speak about the government, maybe as a result of our upbringing. But we've had some very audacious Nigerians. Most people like you as well. And
It shouldn't be an exception. So the thing that we do, we must never normalize exception. Having a voice should not be anything. It should just be normal. That's why I call myself an active citizen. We all should be active citizens. Because when you talk about governance, right, governance is of two sides, according to Dr. Civic. But we have the demand side and the supply side. Those who are voted into office are supposed to supply, and those who vote them into office are supposed to demand. Both of us have failed. People don't make demands. People think it's even rude to make demands. That's why you hear someone say to you, why are you talking to a president this way? It's old enough to be your grandfather. I'm thinking, who voted him to be grandfather? Grandfathers are in the villages. If we want to go and meet them, we go there, we kneel down, we greet them. So for them, the abusive relationship that you see is that they're being treated so badly They've normalized it because that's what they've known all their lives. And I'll tell you, the first set of abusers, the first set of dictators that Nigerians came across were parents. Most parents are dictators. They don't allow children to speak. You're not supposed to have a voice. Oh, I tell you to do this, that's it. Even when the child is explaining why, you're slapping the child and saying, why are you asking questions? And so you now start school. The same thing, teachers are telling you why you ask, you don't say anything. They will beat you. You even be punished for putting an answer which the teacher hadn't given to you, even if it's right, because the teacher is saying to you, why did you go out of what I taught you? And then you see the religious leaders also the same thing. So, people then are conditioned to always fall in line and always just be respectful and obey and not say anything. And so when they become adults, like I said earlier, they simply replace all these ones with government. So when government says to them, hey, sit down, they just sit down there without asking questions. So when we talk about people having voices, you understand, it shouldn't be an exception, it should be the norm. Everybody should have a voice to be able to speak up. Even in our houses, our children should be able to hold us, accountable, and we'll be comfortable with being held accountable, and we become accountable to them. Not the one that will feel that, oh, I'm your parent, I brought you to this world, I can take it. No, the fact that you brought the person to the world doesn't mean that you own the person, and the person have their own voice. I'm speaking for experience, because I'm one of those, children that grew up. I got the beating of my life all through because I always had a voice.
Yeah. You've seen that the family is the, very basic of society, the start point of every society. And like you have mentioned, how important it is for parents to create that enabling environment for children to be able to speak up. What have you done differently? I know we'll go back to democracy, but what have you done differently in terms of upbringing? How have you seen that play out with your children, and what should we expect? What is the ideal Nigerian society?
So for me, the first thing is this one, because I grew up, being termed a stubborn child, and also having to fight adults all my life. I would say it, like I always say, my mom says in my culture, nobody wins, and she doesn't say it smiling. She's actually angry when she sees, oh, leave this place, you're too objective, you're always, for me, it's always about being on the side of the truth, you understand? And as a child, I grew up saying that when my truth favored adults, they are happy with me, but when it didn't favor them, they are not happy with me. So what I did first was to, all those things that in my upbringing that I felt I didn't like, I made sure that I corrected them with my children. And I hope also, because nobody is perfect, there are certain things that I did that are wrong. I hope my children also correct them, with their own children. That's if they want to have children. I'm not one of those parents that are telling my kids, oh, you must get married and give me grandchildren. I always say to people, if you want grandchildren, go and adopt. Don't put pressure on anyone. So in terms of, the first thing for me that I do, I didn't bring up my children in terms of giving them instruction. This is what you do, this is what you don't do. No, I brought them in telling, I will explain to you the reason why you shouldn't do this thing. And if you do it, there are consequences for doing it. And if you go ahead and do it, then you find out what those consequences are. And in having those kind of discussion, what it now does is that it helps the children to be able to have the skill to make decision, to process information, and be able to make informed decision, out of it. So my children are, they grow up being vocal. If I do something, mommy, why are you doing this? You're not supposed to do this. They need to say this is wrong, or one way or the other. I'll give you an example. My daughter was, I think, 10, 11 years old, when one day we were going to drop her brother in school, and we were late. So if we go the right way, there was the one way that was a shortcut, but it was one way we'll be going the wrong way. But if we go all throughout the way that we're supposed to go, we're going to be late, maybe like a few minutes late. And I said to them, well guys, it's night. Do we go the wrong way just to be able to get to a school? Because when the time closes in their school, they don't open the gate. And my daughter said, no, mommy, it's wrong. You can't do that. You have to go the right way. And I went the right way. And when we got there, as soon as we got there, we were like, I think 2-3 minutes late. And the school, the gate had closed. As soon as I got there, I just turned. There was another guy in front of us that was arguing with the school. I didn't do that. I went back home. The next morning, I woke up to wake my son up for him to get ready. So I dropped him now. Since he was a body student at that time, I did drop him the day before. And by the time I got to the room, my son was already awake and he was dressed. So these are the lessons all three of us learned. My son learned that for every behavior, there's consequence for it, good or bad. You're going to face whatever it is. So because he didn't get to school the night before, he couldn't get it. So he now had to come in the morning. My daughter learned that she has a voice, and her voice is very important, and whatever it is, she must exercise it. I learned that no matter anything that happens, you must always follow the right thing. As much as, have conversation, as much as telling the kids what to do, you also must do those things. So for me, I have a home where our kids, we speak as human beings. I don't believe that I own my children because I gave birth to them. I don't believe that, they have to do anything that I'm doing. One thing that's in our house is the fact that it's only God you need to obey. Whatever I say, until and unless you are satisfied with what I'm telling you, you don't have to obey me. And these things that we do where maybe they say there's a remote here, and then you tell the child to come from somewhere, come and give it to you. I didn't do any of those with my kid because I hated it as a child. I'm like, why are you calling me all the way from that place to come and give this particular thing to you? And I'll just end here by saying that recently, there was a time my daughter called me and she was like, Mommy, do you know what? These people are just saying a lot of things. They're saying that African mothers, this is what they do. And she was naming those things where they like, I brought you to this one, I'll take you out. And she couldn't relate because she was telling me, she said, no. It was like, African mothers don't do this. And I said to my kids, I said to her, I said, look, I didn't do it, but a lot of parents do it. I was very deliberate in the things that I did with my upbringing because I feel the number one advocacy is for you to give responsible citizens to society, and most importantly also for me, which I'm so happy with the kind of life that my kids had, is that they were not judgmental. There was nothing like discriminating anybody. Everybody is everywhere, and there was respect. Give everybody their respect, and also ensure that you also get your own respect back.
Okay, it's interesting to know that you've changed a lot of narrative, particularly for your children, as it's as it's predominant with Nigerian parents. But let's look at the 1960s and now in terms of Nigeria. What has really changed? What is the gap? How would you define the gap?
So defining the gap, that's a jam question, or should I say thesis, because it's a whole lot. Where are you going to start from?
Democracy.
Okay, in terms of democracy, let me look at it as 1960 was the time we got, our independence. There was euphoria, and one of the things that some of us forget is that at one time that 1960 was something that was impossible. Nelson Mandela said that it's impossible until you get it done, until it's done, right? And so that 1960 was something for some people, it was impossible. We're not going to get independence from these people. They own everything and all of that. And then there were also people who didn't want the independence, people who deliberately sabotaged the independence because they felt that, Nigeria was not matured enough, to be able to govern itself. So these are for me, and I think these are some of the things that we sometimes forget because it's now 65 years. I was born after the independence, so I knew Nigeria to be Nigeria where it is. But for those people who were born before the independence and who were sort of like matured enough to know what's happening, there are certain things that they appreciate that we can't appreciate because we take it for granted. The independence for us is for granted. That's on one hand. On the other hand also is the potential that Nigeria had. And I see also, I think about the tragedy of what is today, where if you look back in history, for example, I think it was in the 60s or early 70s, I think it was in the 60s, that King Faisal of Saudi Arabia would come to UCH, you understand, University College Hospital in Ibadan, to be treated. You had people who were coming from other countries in the West coming to Nigeria to come and school in Nigeria. And so for people who live that era, when they see what is happening now, for them I think it's such a tragedy. For you to see where schools where there was real education, if you see those old movies or old news reels of what happened before. And you see Nigerians of that time, they're speaking with such depth, with such clarity, being able to delve into issues and academically sound. And you're looking at the Nigeria of today, where almost as if critical thinking is nowhere to be found. I mean, it's something that will sadden you, and you're wondering what actually happened, because once upon a time, the intellectuals actually owned, the society, they were respected. Right now, there's anti-intellectualism currently. In short, you literally have to behave as if you don't know anything for you to be, taken as something, in Nigeria. So those are things that, if you look at it, it's almost like tragic. But there's also something that people talk about when you're talking about today, and like, oh, in the olden days, the way they used to dress, they used to be more modern, they used to be like, people don't read history. Have you checked them? With their, short, those things, 60s towards 70, where there was a lot of sort of free kind of thing, even though our parents sometimes they behave as if it wasn't, that wasn't done. And a lot of, if you go back, like, even like the 60s or before the 60s, a lot of the things that are coming up now were actually things that they were doing before, and we have sort of like lost our culture in a lot of things that we do now. People will then begin to say to you, oh, this is not African. I'm like, no, go read your history. This is actually African. But when we were doing it, they were being told that it is barbaric or it looks uncultured. And then now the West have sort of like taken it, they're doing it now. We're looking as if, it's more cultured over there. But at the end of the day, I would say that the capacity to own yourself and be able to make decisions is everything. And so if I look at 60 and now, I would say, wow, we've done quite well in terms of the fact that we were able to vote and we voted, even though the voting is, it's a bit one time, but it is there. And then people have social media now, they are able to talk back to their government, they are able to ensure that they listen to them. So these are also amazing and great things. Yeah, prosperity, Nigeria, in terms of the economic power, we're coming from somewhere. At that 1960s, our agriculture, so now going into a bit into economics, you're seeing our agriculture where it was employing literally a huge amount, over 50-60%, being there. And then we lost all of that now by the time we got the oil, and every of our dependence is on that one. But I would say overall also, there are certain things where you look at life right now, people are able to have access to certain things that then they couldn't have access to. If you look at the percentage of people who had cars at that time, and now it's a bit different. Now it's more, there are things that then were really seen as luxury. People couldn't afford them. I mean, having a bicycle then was something, but now you see people, the standard of living to an extent has increased, even though certain things, are still quite difficult as it is. But as a nation, we haven't done as well as we should. And for me, I just think 65, let's say we've done enough of 65 of not doing the right thing. For the next years that are coming, we need to begin to do the right things. And we can actually make it still, before we get to 100, break that, developmental city and get Nigeria to where it's supposed to be.
Hopefully. You talked about anti-intellectualism, where back then in history was people who were knowledgeable that were speaking. When you talk about that in this time, are you saying that, are you talking about the people speaking not being knowledgeable, or the people in government not being knowledgeable enough?
I'm thinking about the society denigrating people who are knowledgeable. Now, grammar will chop. You understand? Somebody is running for office. You have someone who barely has a certificate. They can't speak English. They can't add up anything. Yeah. Some people will say that, oh, there's intelligence and English. But hey, that's how we're taught in school. If you went through primary, secondary, university, there's no how you're not going to learn English. Because you're in Nigeria, that's our lingua franca, right? And then you see someone who can't add up anything. That person, Nigeria sees that person as someone who can be a leader. But when you see someone who knows their onions, who are giving you economics or whatever, who are giving you what it takes to govern a state, they're looking at you these days and saying, "Her grammar will be chop." And then there was a term that was done, economics, ERR, to learn economics. to mock people who are saying that, look, the Nigerian economy is going haywire, it's not being done correctly, and then they come and they will make jest of you. We've reached a place where money is worshipped, education is no longer worshipped, and you're seeing a lot of younger people are saying to you they don't even want to go to school. And all you need to do is to be able to get money. It doesn't matter how you get the money. And so that's what people worship. And so if you want to like gain popularity, even right today, if you want to gain popularity, if you want to be regarded as something, you need to behave in a way as if you don't know what you're doing. So then people begin to, hype you, and so it's almost as if it's comic relief, but that's what seemed to be working. And like before I came here, I was having a conversation about like, if you put out things, for example, you're doing a podcast, let's look at podcasts, right? If I come and say silly something, I tell you I'll be trending. Things that really don't matter. Olofofo kind of talk. But if you talk about intellectual things, you're teaching people about doing something, financial literacy, or the economy, you're talking about, people are not interested. They just feel like, oh no, they just want escape. It's escapism that we have in the society now. But then, there was competition to be an intellectual. It was such a good thing. Unfortunately, the military were the ones who went on attack, especially with the university system and everything. And here we are, we're still struggling.
All right. For you, what does a responsible government look like, particularly for Nigeria as a diverse nation? What is responsibility?
For me, a responsible government is one that has empathy, that thinks about its people first and it puts its people first. A government that would not want to see anyone suffer. A government that doesn't want a country where there is no free public education. A government that will be aghast at the fact that access to good quality education is dependent on the economic status of one's family. That automatically, if a child is born into a poor family, they can't have access to education. A responsible government for me is the one that says, our children, what's their nutrition like? Because the food that a child eats from 0 to 5 is very important, and it helps with the development of the brain and also help with its intellectual life going forward. And so a responsible government is saying, hey, I want to ensure that kids have food to eat. I want to ensure that the maternal mortality is reduced. I want to ensure that infant mortality is reduced. A responsible government is the one that says, if you touch one of my citizens, I will go after you no matter what it takes, so that the citizens know that their country has their back. A responsible government is the one that it doesn't feel good and happy, using billions of naira to renovate a building or to build flyovers when the citizens are suffering. The citizens don't have good roads to get to their houses. They don't have good healthcare system. The primary healthcare system is nowhere to be found. For me, responsible government will be a government that says, in every part of Nigeria, wherever you are as a farmer, no matter how remote you are, if you produce your product, agriculture, you farm, that your agricultural produce, within 4 hours, we ensure that you're able to get it to the market. From your farm to the market, there should be good roads, there should be affordable transportation, and we will help you in processing, we will help you to get the market that you want to. For me, a responsible government is the one that is saying that, how do we create jobs for our children, our youth, our teeming youth? How do we ensure that we're no longer living the system of education that we have, the curriculum and all of that, is not the one that is based on the industrial age, is the one that is made for the machine age that we are now. Because when you talk about industrial age, it means it was, what did you know? The machine age is about how fast can you learn, unlearn and relearn. So it's making sure that it's providing the basic infrastructure and facilities for its citizens, its youth to be able to get themselves prepared for the jobs of the 21st century. When you talk about that responsible government, is the one that its foreign policy is top-notch and is leading, Africa. Because what we do in Nigeria does not just affect us as Nigerians, it affects the whole of Africa, because we are the most populous nation in Africa, the populous black most populous black nation, whereas our economy is supposed to be number one. Right now, it's not number one. So there, if you allow me, I could go on and on and tell you what responsible,
Yes,
leadership and government is all about. But the number one thing is that a responsible government will be the one in which the leaders ensure that the kind of life that they have for themselves and their children is the kind of life that they have for all of their citizens, and that the most vulnerable in the society are taken care of. And currently we don't have that.
Interesting. A responsible government is the one that will see that the kind of life they have is replicated in their citizens. But moving on, as Nigeria turns 65, what practical ways should everyday Nigerian, what practical things, how can everyday Nigerian hold government accountable and demand better governance?
The best way for any Nigeria to hold government accountable is to hold themselves accountable first. I always say that I hold myself to higher standards than I hold any other person. If you hold yourself accountable and ensure that you're doing the right thing, no matter how little it is. And sometimes it's always easier to do the wrong thing, but you still don't do it. Remember the story I gave you about my daughter saying, no, Mommy, don't go through this road, because even though it's dark, nobody's going to see us, but it's still wrong. If every one of us can do that, then when we see things happening, we'll say no to those things. We'll hold, those who are elected or those who are appointed, are accountable. One of the things is that people do not have the moral justification for them to be able to say something. And I'll give you an example. When you're driving and you see that red light, you see it's red, and you drive through, what moral justification will you have to tell somebody not to steal billions of naira? What you did is the same thing. It's all about opportunity. If you can drive through that red light, you can also steal money when you have the opportunity. When you see that one way and you say, no, I'm not going to take it, even though it's going to take me longer to go and do the right thing, just do the right thing. So from there, then you will now have the moral justification and then hold other people accountable, because there's something about when you're pointing that finger, others are pointing at you. And if you're doing the wrong thing, you can't be convincing, and you can't even speak because you also have done, wrong thing. There's so many things that have been normalized in our country. People collecting bribe, they call it one thing or the other. People just taking something that doesn't belong to them, that is the office, as long as it's public fund or public related. If we begin to stop all of these things, then we'll be able to hold accountable. But come to think about it, in a society where parents think it's normal for you to pay for somebody to write exam for your child, who are you going to hold accountable? Is it the people that exams were written for them that are going to hold anybody accountable? Or the people who maybe they paid them extra when they were doing their NYC, they refused to return the money, that are going to hold anyone accountable? I think it was last month where the news came out that a commissioner, is it in Taraba or one of this, no, I think in northeastern state, was caught with someone writing the ICANN professional exam for her. So in a society like that, I don't know whether the person has resigned or has been driven away. I've not really followed that story, but this is something that has so much been normalized in our country. So in that way, how do you hold those people accountable? So I would say holding government accountable starts with you holding yourself accountable and ensuring that wherever you find yourself, that you do the right thing and you ensure the right thing will be done no matter what. And when they know, and at this time, I think I'm going to quote Mr. Peter Obi, who says, when he talks about corruption, and he says, if the leader is not corrupt, the wife of the leader, and I will add, whether the wife or the husband of the leader is not corrupt, the children are not corrupt, the people around will also not be corrupt, because they can see. But the moment the leader is corrupt, every other person is corrupt. So if you turn it again, that if you are not corrupt, you're able to hold people accountable and ensure that they too are not corrupt.
Thank you very much for your time and, for this beautiful interview. Thank you.
For having me.
Thank you.